Hello and welcome to the Awaken Feminine podcast. I'm your host, Kaki Lee, a mindset coach and healer who's on a mission to share the love and wisdom of inspiring women from around the world who have gone through adversity and turned their pain into purpose. Today, I am excited to share the love and wisdom of psychotherapist, counselor, and host of the Dr. Lynne Santiago podcast, Dr. Lynne Santiago, who is joining me all the way from Tampa, Florida in the USA. Welcome, Lynn.
You. Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here.
I'm really excited to have you on the show. Welcome. So, Lynn, before we dive into your journey, I really love to know what is your definition of an awakened feminine or awakened woman?
Okay, so that was interesting for me because I don't have a definition for an awakened feminine. And I thought about that, and I thought about, well, what would I say, or what word would describe me, what I do, or my sense of self. And I realized that there were lots of times in my life where I tried to find some label. I kind of started my journey, my inner journey of more consciousness through the new agey time. And there was a little bit of resistance to that. And then just I got to a point where it was like, I'm me. I understand feminine, masculine energy. I work with that. I've, have educated myself or read a lot about that from different sources. So I cannot say honestly that I have a definition.
And that is
or that I can
absolutely
apply
fine.
that to myself. I can say, well, yes, I'm an awakened feminine.
Yeah.
I know I'm awakening. I know
Yeah.
I'm moving through that process.
Yeah.
My belief is everybody is. I like to use the word becoming
Yes.
As that to describe that process.
Yeah.
But, to say awakened feminine, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah. And that's absolutely fine. I think it's been interesting asking that question because everyone has a different answer and a different definition. So I just love to know what people's thoughts are around that because it is so varied and different. But I think at the end of the day is just really having that sense of self, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So thank
Yes.
you, Lynn. I love getting different perspectives. So that's great.
Mhm.
So, Lynn, I really love you to start sharing your journey with us. So, I mentioned you're a psychotherapist, you're a counselor, and I know that you've done a lot of different things over your career. You've been in that field for over 20 years, 26 years from
Yes,
memory.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and um, you've served people, children to people with sexual abuse, families, veterans. So,
Yes.
a wide ranging demographic. So,
Mm-hmm.
what was it that led you down that path to become a psychotherapist, as counselor? Did you have an aha moment, a spiritual awakening where you went, this is what my purpose and my life is about,
Mm-hmm.
to serve people in this way?
Well, I think I have a different story that many people might say, because I believe I always knew I wanted to be a psychotherapist since a child,
Yeah.
since like 8 years old. That's the age I can kind of say, if you would have asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would have said a psychologist. I didn't know about any of the differences in that field. But the reason for that is because my family was in family therapy because of some crisis that was going on in our lives. And that's when I got to meet psychologists. They were actually psychologist interns, and I thought they were really cool because they were young and they were like really hip. And so it was like, I want to be that. I want to be them. But also, I grew up in a town that was sandwiched between two huge, major psychiatric
Oh,
institutions that were built in the early 1900s. So to get a picture of that, kind of imagine one of those scary movies where it's taking place in a mental health, a mental institution, and that what you will see.
yeah.
But the grounds were beautiful then,
Yeah.
because this was a time when they were maintained and beautiful. And I would see people walking along, and they would walk through our streets, some of them, and they would be like talking to the air, talking to themselves. And I always wondered, like, what's going on with that person that is happening to them?
Yeah.
No, like what is, and then it was, so what's happening in those buildings? It was always a kind of a mystery for me, but also my friends, we create all kinds of stories about what
Yeah.
was happening in there. Started it for me, really.
Yeah.
And then I feel so fortunate because I was able to stay on that road, although there was a period of time when I took a different turn.
Yeah.
In my teen years, when I was 17, I joined the Army, and there's all kinds of reasons for that. But I really feel fortunate that I was able to kind of rediscover
Yeah.
that desire. And I really do believe it's a calling.
Yes.
Oh, a calling. I thought that it was lost.
Yeah.
I thought it was, well, I made this decision. I'm down this road. Now I have two little kids. I'm in a kind of a challenging marriage. I'm young, I'm 20, 21 years old. And I thought that I made that choice, and that option didn't exist anymore.
Mm.
But then
Wow.
it came back up again.
Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
I want to just jump back a little bit. So you know, 17, you said you joined the army, but you still,
Mm-hmm.
all this time you've had this vision, I'm going to be a psychologist. And then you went into the army, and then you were saying that obviously you got married and had kids at that time. So what was it that really sparked you going back into that vision, stepping back into that dream that you've always had
Mm-hmm.
since you were 8?
Hi. So one of the reasons why I went in the Army was because I told myself I could get the money to go to college that way. So
Yeah.
that was my intention.
Yeah.
I messed up high school terribly. I just barely graduated. I couldn't even get into a community college. So it was
Yeah.
that, damage from my behaviors and things I did during high school. So I thought, what am I going to do? So it was join the Army, and I knew I could get the money, and I put in the money where they matched it, and through those 3 years. But then I did make other choices again. I got pregnant, I got married, I went back home after I got discharged. I got, my second child, my daughter was born, and I was in a marriage that was very toxic, with a man who's an addict,
Yeah.
with various substances. And going through that, I discovered Women Who Love Too Much book. I should have put that in there. That might have been. And that introduced me to the whole concept of codependency,
Yeah.
and realizing that that's, what was going on, and the idea that I could do what I want to do.
Yeah.
Like I could do it. And so I always say it's like I went in my closet and I pushed all this stuff aside, and I found that dream again, and I brushed off the dust
Yeah.
and said, okay, I'm gonna take it as far as I can go. Every step I go, I don't know if I'm gonna make it to the next one, but I'm gonna take that step with
Yeah.
anything I have, because it's very challenging. I was on welfare, food stamps,
Yeah.
didn't have a car for a while. And again, was really beaten down by my relationship.
Yeah.
I actually had gotten very depressed,
Yeah.
thought about even ending my life during that period of time.
Yeah.
Um, I distinctly remember laying in bed, and the images of my two children that were under 5, both of them at the time, in my coming to me. And that was what, just keeping them in my mind is what kept me
Yeah.
from acting out on those thoughts of wanting to end my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's such a,
Mhm.
yeah, that's just a profound story. And I want to ask you, like, I know you said you stuffed up in high school, and then you knew that if you could join the army, that you'll have money to go to college. Uh, like how, I guess it's um for most people, if they stuffed up high school, they wouldn't come out of high school going, I need money for college. So
Exactly.
like where was that thought process in that, oh, I stuffed up high school, but I need to go to college? It just seems like such a such a big difference in the
Mm-hmm.
actions and the thinking.
The best way I think I can describe that is it was like I had two parts of myself. And I do still believe that we have parts of ourselves. For various reasons, we kind of fragment.
Yeah.
And I can definitely identify that there was two parts of myself. And one part always knew that I wanted to be a psychologist.
Yeah.
And even through high school, even as I was making these other decisions, sort of like this other part of me, I had already thought about what university I wanted to go to. I knew that it had a great psychology program. So there was like this two competing kind of energies in me. And the one kind of won over. and, and I was like, okay, now I'm here and there's no way I'm going to be able to go to this university.
Yeah.
There's just no way they're going to accept me. But when I joined the Army, they did have the education benefit. I can't even think of it
Yeah.
off the top of my head. But they gave me a chunk of money because of what I scored on the ASVET. And then they met, if I put money into it, they would meet it. And
Yeah.
so I just decided I was just going to put the money into it.
Yeah.
And they give you 10 years after you get out of the military to use that money.
Yeah.
So that was also part because I said, if I don't use that money and I mean, that would just be that
Yeah.
would haunt me for the rest of my life.
Yes.
So I was like 6 years and then I was like, oh my gosh, I got to start.
Yeah.
I've been 6 years of this darkness.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And I want to ask you, you said you were in a toxic relationship where you were that codependent, like having that codependent relationship with your partner. So when you wanted to get back into the studying, get back on the path that you're meant to be
Mm-hmm.
on, right? What
Mm-hmm.
was the reaction and how, like, was there any resistance from him and how did you work through it?
No, not at all.
None at
None.
all.
But there was, as long as it doesn't affect me,
Yeah.
go ahead. That's great. Support you,
Yeah.
but don't allow it to affect me, which meant that there were challenges. For example, I needed to go to school. I needed somebody to be home to watch the kids. He would say he would be there and then he wouldn't be there. So things like I could not count on him. I had
Yeah.
to understand that
Yeah.
and go forward without counting on that. But still, of course, I still counted on it and it would tear me apart.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and at one point later on in my education, he said, I hope that I was getting ready to graduate. I think it was my master's. I hope that no, it was my bachelor. I hope that this doesn't make you leave.
Mm.
Like he was threatened by it. I realized,
Yeah.
that I was kind of moving on or moving ahead and that what I was doing could potentially give me the resources to leave.
Yeah. And did you?
Mhm. It took me a very, very long time, and there's a lot of background into that. Um, this was somebody that I knew since I was a kid. We lived in very close. We could see each other's house
Yeah.
from each. I mean, we were just our families became very integrated. They
Yeah.
still are. They still celebrate each other's birthdays and holidays, and my parents and his parents and their families, and you know
Yeah.
so that was a challenge and a part of it. And
Yeah.
it was one of those things that I could not you talk about fear.
Yeah.
There was a fear.
Yeah.
No, there was a really truly a fear, and it may, and I think maybe it still represents that two parts of myself because I was going on with this, but I was still stuck
Yeah.
with that decision that I made all those years before.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's such a great reminder for people that even though you might have healed that part, you've healed yourself because you started studying and moving
Mm,
on with your life, but then there's still that part where which still holds you back. And we are
yes.
such multifaceted beings that you
Hmm.
work on one part and you're like this, you're great, but then the other part still
Exactly.
holds you there. And
Hmm.
I'm so glad that you were able to work through that, and I'm sure that you
Yeah.
must have done a lot of work to
I
get to where
did.
you did. Yeah.
It, I did a lot of work just starting in the, excuse me, the early part of, well, that marriage and getting back on the path.
Yeah.
A lot of journaling, a lot of reading. And I think what at that stage in my life,
Mm,
what I was getting from the codependency literature and from this relationship that I felt like I was building with Jesus
yeah.
at that time, how I defined that, there was this message, kind of, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they did.
Yeah.
Right? It's like this understanding that people are in the dark and they behave from that place.
Yeah.
And so that's not about you. It's like not about me. It's where they are,
Yeah.
and they're blinded. They're dark, in that dark place that they can't see it. So they're acting in that dark place, and it's hurtful to other people.
Yeah.
No, but there was this kind of forgive, understand, have compassion, and that kind of drove me in that to stay a lot, stay in the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess then if you were working through that forgiveness and that compassion, and actually just knowing that he he doesn't know what he doesn't know, right? So that's how
Exactly.
you found your compassion and your forgiveness.
Hmm.
So what made you finally decide to leave, since you were doing all that work with the forgiveness and the compassion? There obviously was something
Hmm.
that really sparked and went, I can't do this anymore.
I think part of it is that exactly what he feared happened. There was this like mountain that I was climbing, and on the top of the mountain was to be a psychotherapist in private practice.
Yeah.
That was from my 8 years old and climbing that mountain. And that was what was at the top. And I always told myself I was just going to take one step at a time. And wherever I land, I'll know that I did the best I could,
Yeah.
and when I was ready or the timing was right, I could go try to go from that place to the next, right?
Yeah.
And so when I got to that place where I was actually a psychotherapist in private practice with my master's degree and a license in mental health counseling and the ability to take care of myself. My children were older as well, so that
Yeah.
played a part. And there was one, I don't know what it was, one of those events that occurred
Yeah.
that was it. And when it came to me, that was it. I just went right to doing everything I needed to do to end it. It
Yeah.
was very hard.
Yeah.
And
I bet.
I have to say that we ended it from a place of love.
Yeah.
And I believe that's the harder road. And I'll try to help couples with that to understand and acknowledge and honor your love story and the love that you have for each other.
Yeah.
And to end the relationship is really to shift it into a different relationship
Yeah.
and to um, work through anger and fear from a place of love rather than from a place of anger and fear.
Yeah.
And so I I had that kind of inner knowing of that concept, and I was having to kind of, I would help him get, and we had maintained a relationship after that.
Yeah.
Uh, we still co-parented our adult children.
Yeah.
Our families still get together for holidays
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
baby showers, and
Yeah.
you know, um, and so he's still a part of my life in
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful to be able to end that relationship in a loving way. And the
Hmm.
experience that you had in your own journey, I mean, I bet it helps so much with you in your practice as well. And I love
Yes.
that, you've had this vision to be a psychotherapist from when you were 8. And
Hmm.
a lot of people think that, okay, this is where I want to be, and it's this straight line. But just from your journey,
Yeah.
is just this like major scenic route that you've
And
gone.
boulders in front of the road,
Yeah.
and raging rivers, and scary
Yeah.
bridges, and
Yeah, and falling off
no,
cliffs and just climbing back
exactly. And
up
it,
cliffs. And I just love that you just held
yeah.
your vision and you kept going one step at a time, no matter
Hmm.
how hard it was. So that's just such a beautiful story.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
for
you. Yeah.
sharing that, and thank you for you really opening up. So, Lynn, I want to ask you at this moment in this chapter of your life, what is your
Mhm.
personal mission?
So I think my mission has always been about helping other people, and wherever they are, to be towards a more peaceful self, a more authentic self. And um, I think authenticity is part of the process. It's like you don't get to authentic self. You
Yeah.
you grow towards authentic self, and
Yeah.
there's parts of you that are much closer and are authentic, and then there's others that you're kind of helping along. Um, but what I find that has happened through my life is that there's been these kind of stages where I was called to do something specific.
Hmm.
Like, now this is where you're supposed to put your focus. And now I've moved through that. Now there's this other stage where now this is where I'm being called. And the people are in each of those stages. The people who I'm working with, their issues, their challenges, and they're distinctly different,
Yeah.
very different. And so now I have been, over the last, I would say, 3 years, in sort of this place of not knowing where I'm going,
Okay.
and or at least the work of trying to understand
Yeah.
where I'm supposed to be. And some of it has been challenging because some of medical challenges that I have,
Mm-hmm.
of having to let go of some things that that I have used to define who I am. It's sort of that external stuff, the roles and the commitments I've made to organizations and different, things I've done, I had to let go of.
Yeah.
And really have been in a place of kind of one of those dark places again, trying to figure out. I felt like I had already checked off the um, the boxes of what I wanted to do, and then there was no more.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's here?
Yeah.
So I went back into one of those places again of self-reflection, uh, reading. I always say that I'm kind of drawn or directed towards specific books. And when I was in this turmoil in that beginning, going into that, it was like I was just on this raging ocean. I had no
Yeah.
idea. I have no anchor. I had no idea where I was going. And I was in a bookstore with my daughter in Seattle. And I was thinking, I need a book. I want to find a book. And I just walked straight, and I just went right there, pulled the book out, flipped through it, and I said, wow, this is it. This is the book.
Yeah.
And so, um, And so that has helped me. I've done, I started doing a lot of journaling around the reading, and it has taken me, and I want to mention, it's called Living the Examined Life by James Hollis.
Okay.
And it was for, he calls it the second adulthood.
Yeah. Very fitting.
Yes, it's like now it's like the second adulthood. You're going into your second adulthood. And so I've been working at trying to be very open. And the podcast, I believe, is one of the outcomes of that. And it's something I'd never, ever would have imagined I would be doing.
Yeah.
I don't even listen to podcasts. But it was one of those things that I had actually thought about and went, no. A couple of years go by, it come back up again. It's like, maybe I should do a podcast. And that very day, it was like the next day, I got an email from Cameron Steele with Contact Talk Radio asking me if I wanted to do a podcast. And I think that's an example of a lot of things that have happened that just kind of like show up in the most unexpected ways and with most unexpected people. And I know that that's the next step.
Yeah.
And so I've been working on that.
Yeah. And you're an amazing podcast host because I've been on your podcast.
Yes. And, it's a whole new thing, right?
Yeah.
I always say I'm becoming in that role. But I think it's where I am now, or what maybe my mission is, or how I'm going through my mission is helping people realize that they're on a journey.
Yeah.
It's scary. There's boulders, there's cliffs, there's, raging rivers, there's scary bridges.
Yeah.
But you keep your eye kind of on the next step, and you go as far as you can.
Yeah.
That that's part of the becoming story, and that's part of, and it requires courage and beliefs in yourself, and recognizing your limiting beliefs and working through those, and so that's what the podcast is about.
Yeah, and it is, I remember the first question you asked me was, what do you, was it, are we always becoming?
Right.
And and we are, right? And it's such a beautiful question, and it's such a great way, doing the podcast to share these stories so that other people can see and heal from it, so that because they recognize that other people have walked the same path as well.
Yes, exactly. It's
Yeah.
like giving hope and support and kind of letting you can do it. You can do it.
Yeah, exactly. Love that. Thank you, Lynne. So I'd like to go a bit deeper. I mean, we've already gone very deep, but I want to ask, and you've shared so much of your story, but I want to ask you, what was the experience which you have found the most challenging in your life so far, but has led to your biggest breakthrough?
That is very difficult because I feel like there's so many.
Yeah.
Again, it's like you talk about the journey. There's like these challenges, these boulders, these all along the way, and they kind of move you to the next step. And so if I were to go back again to that, I call it awakening of, wow, I could do this. I could go, I could follow my dreams. It's not, they're not gone. They're not in the trash. I could do this. That had come from the challenges in the marriage. There's a lot of stuff that was before that has happened before that. I was adopted. So there's some challenges that I had as far as feeling like I belong. And I have been really working through that in therapy right now for myself.
Yeah.
Kind of going back through there, working through some of that, and really the trauma of my marriage. like there was a lot of trauma in there, and I wasn't physically abused, but there was just a lot that was happening in there that was traumatic that I needed to work through.
Yeah. I just love that you're so open with where you are in your journey and how that you're still working through things,
Mm-hmm.
even things from childhood that
Exactly.
it affects you all the way up to now, and you're
Exactly.
working through. So I
Mm-hmm.
love that you're
Yeah.
sharing that with us. So I want to ask you, I mean, you've gone through a very big journey and a big adventure. So during those dark times, what were some of the tools or teachers that were really helpful in just helping through that healing process, or just to get you out of those dark places?
Mm-hmm. So again, I when I look back and I see their journey, I can see that there were these stages in my life, and in those stages there were different books that were like represented that stage and got me prepared for the next, and then the next, and then the next. So it's so hard to say, I guess reading, journaling,
Yeah.
self-reflection, connecting with like-minded people.
Mm.
If I will quickly share a story that I think is very kind of important, or was part of my journey.
Yeah.
So I was adopted,
Yeah.
and at 4 months old. And so I didn't know any of my biological family. I did get to meet my biological mother when I was 20, and then my biological father when I was 25. During that period of time, I had found Unity Church,
Mm.
and I was learning about metaphysics and reading laws of attraction and manifestation and intention and all of this. This was like this part where I'm learning all of this. And my biological father kept saying, "You got to meet my sister. You got to meet my sister. I know you guys will just hit it off. You got to meet my sister." And so finally, she actually moved to Florida, to St. Pete,
Yeah.
and I got to meet her. And it turns out that she was working on her PhD in metaphysics and doing her dissertation on psychology, theories of psychology and metaphysics, blending the two.
Yeah. Wow.
And she was an intuitive counselor. That's what she did for a living.
Yeah.
And she was, she would do readings, and she could, read energy and give you some insight into kind of where you're going. And um, so it was just amazing, because she also ministered at Unity churches. It was like, okay, maybe there is something to I don't know if it's genes, or it's it's just coming back to part of your spirit family,
Yeah.
or what you want to call it. But so she was very, very helpful. And I had several people I had met that were very much that I had met through Unity and all. So she came into that, or I introduced her to them, and then we really worked together for many years through our kind of growing into an understanding that we're spiritual beings, and that we have this family, and that we're supporting each other.
Yeah.
And she was very helpful in that. And then unfortunately, she had a stroke, and she actually had several strokes before I met her.
Yeah.
And then she had a stroke that was pretty devastating, and she wound up being put in a nursing home, and she died.
Yeah.
So that has been there's all sorts of stories about that. I can tell you that. So she's somebody that influenced me, but I didn't know she died because there was conflict in the family, and then I got disconnected from her. I didn't even know where she was.
Yeah.
And Cinco de Mayo, I just had this feeling to go to Dunedin because that's where she would do some readings. I met a lot of people there that were, her friends.
Yeah.
And one of them owned a Mexican restaurant.
Yeah.
And I would go with her to Cinco de Mayo because they would close the road, and have a fiesta.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I went, and that's when I ran into the woman that owned the restaurant, and I'm sorry that I cannot remember. I cannot remember her name.
Yeah.
The restaurant's named after her, and I can't remember. But anyway, she walked by, and I said, "Hey," and she said, "Oh my gosh, hi." And then she said, "I'm so sorry that about your aunt." And I was like, "What happened?" And then she's the one that told me that she died. So I feel like, again, that I was drawn there, told to go there, so that I would know.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered your question. I think I went, oh, am I transgressing, or, just digress.
Yeah. But, as what's that saying? When the student is ready, the teacher appears. So it seems like at that time, that's the teachers appeared, which was your aunt and the church and the people at the church. So it's just so beautiful when we are ready to step up or step forward into our lives, that people will just somehow come into our lives to help us heal or help us move forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I know you said reading is a big part of your healing process and getting you to, the next level. So can you recommend some books that have really changed your life?
There again, it's just like,
there's a lot.
I think there are books that supported my life. If supported me as I was moving through certain stages. I know you asked that question of like, what are the titles of some of the books that were very influential or impacted me, and you got to remember, I'm 55 years old, so
you look amazing.
There are a group of people, with every generation, there are, sort of new people who write new books. And one thing that I can tell you for sure is that they all say the same thing.
Yeah, I know.
They all say the same thing. They just used maybe different words or different language or, coming from a different perspective, but it all is the same message.
Yeah.
So Shakti Gawain was very influential for me. I read actually several of her books, and one of them that was very impactful, well, the one that it was Living in the Light, but the other one was Creative Visualization, and that was her first book. It was published in 1978.
Okay.
She basically is talking about what we might refer to now as manifestation.
Okay. Yeah, just different language. Yeah.
Yes, but it was the same thing. It's like create that vision, with as much detail as you can. Use all your senses, and that will create the feeling, and that will move you forward. And that was very helpful for me during that certain period of time. I'd have to say through the 90s.
Yeah.
That was also the time when The Secret came out, and Eckhart Tolle, his books came out, and it was like that period of time.
Yeah.
So any of those books I really have resonated with.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah. And it is so true. I read quite a lot of books as well, and the messages are pretty much the same. But sometimes you have to hear it from the right person.
Yes.
That resonates really with you to really get it or to really feel the message. Even though you might have thought, oh yeah, I've heard that 10,000 times. But it just takes that one person that is the right person that kind of goes, oh, finally.
That's how I feel about That's how I feel about the last book that I felt, the Living and Examine Life. He's a Jungian psychologist, and I, I would get books, I would start reading them, and I would get bored because I felt like I wasn't learning anything new, it wasn't speaking to me. I can't. People say, "Oh, did you read this book? Oh, did you read the book?" And I try, and I'm like, it's just, it's just the same thing, just different words. And sometimes I feel like people believe like they invented it or something, like mindfulness. It's like boxed up in it's in a box, and now you can pay a lot for it and get certified in it, and like it's some new thing. But that stage of my life where I was at, I was drawn to this book.
Yeah.
No. And then I was able to, it spoke to me.
Yeah.
And I didn't put it down.
Yeah.
I had to stop myself because I believe in reading books slowly. So you process what you read. And I had to force myself not to go further. I'd like, okay, one chapter at a time.
Yeah. It's so important to, I think, with self-help books and things like that, just to integrate, because if you read too fast, you don't really absorb the concepts and what the meaning of it all.
Right.
Yeah. So
I tell my clients all that when I recommend a book, I that's what I recommend. To get a journal that goes with the book and a highlighter. I don't like the Kindle thing. I know it's a new thing, see? But I always say, get the book. So you can use a highlighter, and you highlight the things that you resonate with, and then you go back and you read them and you journal on it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Yep. I love I still love physical books. I'm a bit old school too. But the smell of books is just so nice holding it. But I've got young kids now, so I've been resorting to audiobooks, which is the next best thing for me. I don't know how you find audiobooks though.
I actually I was resistant to them, and I don't know, one book I decided I was going to do in audio. I went back to read 1984, which was written like in the 60s, and somebody said read it again because it's like totally correlates with what's going on in our political world now.
Yeah.
And so I bought that as an audio and listened to it as I was floating in the pool.
Yeah.
The speaker on, and that was good. And so there's some that I will listen to, but I prefer to read.
Yeah. I prefer to read too. So Lynne, I want to ask you, if you could time travel and go back to a younger version of yourself, what advice would you give yourself?
I had to think about this, and I know I wrote something because I had to think about it for sure. I think it was like the lesson that I learned was about ebb and flow, that you don't need to be fearful because the flow always comes back. The ebb, is where you feel like you have there's lack, or you're going through some kind of a challenge, and there's things that you think you need that are either leaving or not there. And then there's flow, and it comes back. And sometimes it comes back like twofold, right? It's like, whoa, didn't expect that. And then there's ebb, and it goes back into that place again. And so when I learned that, that's when I was able to really decrease or manage anxiety and fear better. So that's what I would tell my younger self, that it's okay. You'll be okay. There's ebb and flow. It never stops. You'll be okay.
Yeah. That's great advice, because I think a lot of people think that if life isn't rainbows and unicorns, then it's a bad life.
Exactly.
But there is, as you said, the ebbs and flows of life.
Right.
And just
all of these 3 books talk about fear, talk about going through those challenging places, and how lessons that are in those so that ebb, when you feel like you don't have enough, or there's something missing, or there's something that you're working through, that again, all of those books talk about having courage.
Yeah.
And, that it'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Follow yourself. They all also refer to self.
Yeah.
Follow yourself.
Yeah. Thank you. So, Lynn, this year has been a bit of a crazy, wild ride for everyone. And a lot of people are navigating change, or, we're nearly at the end of the year already. But I know there's still people that are still in that mode of fear where they might be wanting to change, but they just can't seem to get themselves to take that first step. What advice or recommendations would you have for those people to just get rid of that fear or limiting belief that is holding them back?
I mean, this might be one of those examples of ebb.
It's a long ebb.
It is. It's a long ebb, and there's high tide, low tide, and we're in kind of that low tide, right? Because one of the hard things that people are having that is really creating a lot of anxiety is that it's hard to plan. It's hard to see ahead of yourself because there's so much uncertainty. And a lot of people are in places where maybe they lost jobs, their income has been decreased. College students, or new graduates. I mean, they can't see ahead at all. They're back living at their parents when they had this vision of being on their own and, getting their first job. And so it's so hard. It is very hard to kind of keep your eye or create that vision and start walking forward when there's so much that's pulling you back or there's just in front right now. So I think it's about, again, learning how to be at peace, doing mindfulness, again, just learning how to be as comfortable as possible in your anxiety. Everybody is experiencing anxiety. I have therapist friends and we talk and we're like, oh my God, we're working with all our clients about anxiety, but what about us? We really have anxiety too. It's like, yeah, for the same reasons, but, we're trying to use all those skills to remember that, self-care. Confront fear, use tools. That is just going to help us all through the anxiety. So everybody's experiencing anxiety to some level or another. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Lynn. So that's a great segue to go into my next question, because I'm all about self-love and self-care, because that was a big part of my journey, as you probably remember. So what are your top 3 go-to activities to ensure that you give yourself that self-love or self-care that you deserve?
So certainly time to read and to journal, self-reflect. I think the biggest one is going back into therapy. That was, okay, it's now time to, focus on me. It's time to, heal what needs to be healed. And that is a form of, self-love for sure. It's like taking care of myself. I've been taking care of others for my whole life. And it's time to get down and dirty and some of that stuff. And my clients have so much courage through the years. I think, oh my gosh, they have so much courage. And now as I'm working through trauma, I know that that's the greatest part of, as I would say, with self-love. And self-care.
I love that. That is one of the self-care or the activities to actually go into therapy, because so many people are so scared of working on themselves because they have to face the thing that they don't want to face. But
Yes.
to be able to go in and do that, it is very loving for yourself. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, thank you
Right.
for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Lynne, before we wrap up, I would really love to know what is really setting your soul on fire right now? What's getting you really excited?
I would have to say the podcast. And I'm at the stage in my life where I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to be doing in my life? And I've been drawn to Costa Rica. My husband's Costa Rican,
Yeah.
but I've been drawn there. It's like so beautiful, so peaceful. And so we bought a little piece of property. I say it's like our little slice of the jungle
Yeah.
paradise, really little. And we don't have anything on it yet. So my, where I believe I'm on my way is being able to be in Costa Rica, in that place that's so healing and so serene
Mm,
and so peaceful, and do remote therapy and do the podcast, like do what I'm doing,
yeah.
but in this beautiful, serene, know, place where it doesn't matter where you look, it's just
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I have a passion to get there, to
Yeah.
be working towards to get there, and doing the online therapy, which is, there's some things that happen out of COVID that are like positive, and I know I, I was like, my dream is to build a practice online,
Yeah.
and then COVID happens, and now I'm building a practice online.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
um, and then I don't know, because what I have learned from my journey is that I'm driven somewhere, or I'm called somewhere, but I don't know what's going to be on the other side of that. So there may be some things that I'm going to do in Costa Rica that I have no idea right now what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah.
So it's just following what resonates.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of life, just
Mm-hmm,
following those steps, following your intuition, which is what you've been
exactly.
doing all these
Mm-hmm.
years, just
Right.
moving along and seeing where it takes you. So I love that. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Costa Rica sounds amazing. One of my mentors, she's there with her partner, and yeah, I was supposed to be there in October, but COVID happened, so
Yeah.
to meet with my mentor. But anyway,
It's a very
so
healing place.
yeah,
It's just a very healing place.
yeah, yeah,
Because you
that's what she was
get through the
saying.
travel part, because like the day of travel is the opposite of healing, and it's so stressful. But once you get like planted there, it's like,
Wow, yeah.
yeah,
So
very healing.
hopefully when we can travel again, I can go there and meet up with
Mm-hmm,
her. So yeah. So
mm-hmm.
Lynne, thank you so, so much for sharing your love and
Thank
wisdom with us
you.
today. It's been such a great conversation, and I just, love your journey and your vulnerability. So thank you so much. So
Thank you for this opportunity. It's been
yeah,
wonderful.
I just wanted you to share, if people want to find out more about you and how they can work with you, where should they go?
Mm-hmm. So I have two websites. One is for the podcast, and the other is for my private practice. So um, private practice is www.lynnesantiagolmhc.com. You can Google Lynne Santiago Tampa, and I will come up. I'm just on there all over the place.
Yeah.
And then the podcast, I'm looking for people who would like to be on my podcast and share their own becoming story, their own journey. So if anybody would like to do that, that would be awesome. It's www.thedrlynnShow.com. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you, Lynne. I'll have all your
Mm-hmm.
details and any other recommended resources in the show notes so people can reach out to you. So thank
Mm-hmm.
you once again.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for having me. It's been an honor.
Thank you. And until next time, I love you. I believe in you, and you're worth taking that first step to the
Oh,
life of your
thank
dreams.
you.